newspaper reporter that I used to go out with said to me, you know, he'd take me to an eating place, and I'd eat a whole dish full. He couldn't eat. He said, "You finish this for me because I don't want to waste it. It was expensive food, you know." So he said, "Gee," he says, "you really ate that." He says, "I wouldn't want to support you." He's only kidding, you know.
Okay, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Great. Okay, so Marie
Marie
Tibaldo.
Tibaldo.
Tibaldo. You came to Toronto when you were 14.
14 years of age.
From where?
From Connecticut.
So you're an American originally.
American born, but a Canadian citizen.
Right. Is your family Italian then?
Both my parents are from northern Italy, and they were very progressive minded, both of them. They didn't believe in getting married in the church, so it was marriage by civil ceremony, which is not legal in Canada, but it was in the United States, so therefore I'm a legitimate child. In Canada, I would have been classified as an illegitimate.
Where in Connecticut?
Danbury, Connecticut.
Do you know a woman named Mabel Carver Crouch
Never heard of her.
from Stony Creek?
Never heard of her.
She was the person that gave Emma Goldman the idea to come back to America in 1933-34.
Well,
And she did come back through Toronto. And of course she died in Toronto. Now, you knew her in what period? In the 30s or earlier even?
I'm not good at dates. But when she first came to Toronto, I know the first birth control movement ever held in Toronto was Emma Goldman was a speaker, and we could not at that time get a speaker, chairman to chair the meeting because birth control was a taboo subject.
Now this is way later. This is what, before the First World War, no?
No, it was after the World War.
Canada started with birth control that late because Emma was imprisoned in 1916 for distributing birth control in the United States.
Yeah, I know, but when she came here on a lecture tour, I don't remember dates. Isn't that
But it was
strange?
after the First World War, certainly.
Oh, definitely after the First World War.
It was after her deportation then from the United States. She couldn't go back to the United States after that.
Yes, that's right.
So she stayed in Toronto at that time. Was she staying at Mrs. Ladin's house? Mr. Ladin?
Well, she stayed at on Spadina
Oh, yes.
Avenue, where Carl showed you.
Carl Longboard.
Yes. Carl Langbert showed you where she stayed. And she's a great cook. I was amazed at what a wonderful cook Emma Goldman is. Extraordinary cook. She had everybody happy with her specialty.
What was her specialty?
A roast duck.
Really?
And I don't know what she put over it, but that's what gave it the flavor. Anyway, she was always very happy to be surrounded by people, very social.
Yes.
And anyway, when birth control had never been discussed in public. In fact, the public health nurse lost her job because she was giving out information on birth control. And the public health officer, the medical officer of health, was very sympathetic with the birth control movement. He had to keep it quiet. He sympathized with her. He tried to save her, but the Catholic Church is too powerful, and she lost her job.
What was her name? Do you remember?
I don't remember her name. This is several years back. But anyway, we held. I went to the Health League of Canada and asked them if we could rent their hall. And of course, Dr. Gordon Bates, who was head of the Health League in Canada, was sympathetic with the birth control movement, so there was no trouble to get that hall. They didn't bar us from getting it. And he says, in fact, it's a wonderful thing, because he was mainly interested in eradicating or preventing syphilis. At that time, it was rampant. The teenagers, it was a near epidemic. And this is what he disseminated a lot of information to the students, the universities. He did a wonderful job. But after he died, they didn't continue the work, so then the increase. So it was a serious loss to lose him, because he was very dedicated and determined to eradicate the evils. And of course, he was very much in favor of birth control, very progressive-minded. So anyway, we rented this hall, but we could not get a speaker. Nobody, chairman, nobody was willing to be. They were scared to be a chairman of the birth control meeting.
Even Dr. Bates?
Oh, well, we didn't ask him. We wouldn't have asked him because we weren't going going to jeopardize him.
Uh-huh.
He's too valuable.
Mhm.
Wouldn't even ask him. But I asked the wife of the professor of political economy at University of Toronto, because he was very much in favor of birth control. While I sympathize with you, he said, I cannot take the chair or my wife because we would lose our jobs. Then I asked R.C. Reed, Mrs. Reed, R.C. Reed, he's one of our very best reporters. He wrote a lot about Emma Goldman. I wish I had kept all those articles he wrote about Emma Goldman. You would have got a lot of wonderful information, but you
You
get
can't.
stacked, you can't keep, and I'm sorry.
What paper did you write for?
It was a Star,
The Toronto Star?
Toronto Star, many, many years ago. He wrote wonderful art. He worshipped Emma Goldman. He wrote wonderful articles.
What was his name?
Robert R.C. Reed.
Uh-huh.
And he was one of the ace reporters on the Star, and he really worshipped her. He was a man of few words. You'd have him in a group and he'd never talk, but he was a very fluent writer. And Emma worshipped him,
Oh.
because I had a little dinner at the house, and invited these people that she liked. And
You had a dinner at which house?
at my house, yeah.
Where was that?
When I lived on at the Ulster Apartments on Grange Avenue. And so we had a dinner. We had Professor McIver, who wrote a book on political economy, and that was used as a textbook at the University of Toronto for many, many years. Of course, now I guess they have, something more modern. It wouldn't still be in use for sure. And there was R.C. Reed and his wife, and who else did I have? Good gosh, I can't remember. But anyway, Emma was so happy when she was with people, especially people that converse in an intelligent manner, no antagonisms. So anyway, we were determined to go through with this birth control meeting. It wasn't a large meeting, in spite of the fact that we advertised it very well, but we could not get a speaker. So I got in touch with all of these prominent people. There was nobody except Alice Loeb, who was president of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. She was a retired school teacher, and she was very much interested in peace and also birth control. And she was very much disappointed when in Russia they were against birth control. She couldn't believe it. And therefore she lost sympathy with the Russian Revolution, because the leaders were just misleaders. And so anyway, Emma said, well, then you'll have to be the chair lady. And when some reporters heard that a teenager was going to be chairman of a birth control meeting, the reporter said to me, this is going to be a scoop. We'll headline in newspapers, teenager encourages immorality.
Oh, great.
Well, I didn't have any fear of losing my job or anything, because my boss was in favor. In fact, he wanted to come to the birth control meeting. I said to him jokingly, as you don't need to come. I said, my God, in 8 years, as you've only had one child, you've done very well. And so anyway, he said, well, I want to come and see if there's any better method. I said, listen, we're not giving out any recipes on better methods.
How old were you with this?
I was just about 18.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, he came just the same. Of course, you know, I was joking about him staying away. But do you know, about 10 months after that, he said to me, he said, my wife is pregnant and you're the blame. I said, I'm to blame for you attending a birth control meeting? He says, precisely, because I changed my method. And he says, my own method was better.
Oh.
And he said, they had a girl, a daughter, and he named her Marie, named her after me.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And so she became a school teacher. She married a doctor, and his son was a doctor, and he married a school teacher.
Okay.
So anyway, I had a wonderful boss, and he would never have fired me. Although once when I wanted to take a month's holiday to go up north, I love the north, he said, when you come back, there won't be any job. But I knew he was only joking, so when I came back, it's just as though nothing happened, you know.
What was the job?
I was designing embroideries,
Oh,
and that's a luxury trade.
yeah.
So anyway,
So you got to know Emma through that meeting then, when you were about 18?
no, how did I get to know it? Well, I knew quite a number of the Jewish people, the progressive-minded Jewish people,
Like the longboards?
like the Langboards. I knew all their circle. I went to their camp at Lake Wilcox. And what's the name of the Jewish group? I forgot now. The Jewish,
The Arbeiterbund, the Workman's Circle?
the Workmen's Circle, yeah. it was through the working circle that I met these
Mhm.
people, and of course they were enthused because why should a young person be so serious about these things? And even the newspaper reporters, how is it that you come to these serious-minded meetings instead of being out having a good time and living a normal life like young teenagers live? I says, because I'm interested in this.
Yeah.
I says, my parents are, and of course, have that background.
Did you remain a close friend of Emma's from, I guess that would have been around 1922, 23, right up until her death in 1940? Did you see her frequently?
No, I didn't, because she was always surrounded by people that were going to do things for her, like Lady Kemp. Lady Bailey, niece, was very much upset. She wanted to be a working girl, but you see, society condemned a society girl from taking a job, and she wanted to take a secretarial job. So she spoke to Emma about it, and Emma said, well, you should act according to the way you feel. If you want to liberate yourself, just take that step. And she did. She went to New York City, and she met one of the, in the Greenwich Village, she met one of the writers, poor writer, and she lived in poverty after living in wealth here in Toronto. But she didn't mind. She loved this.
Well, she was Lady Kemp? She was
She was a niece of Lady Bailey.
In England?
She lived in Toronto. She had quite an estate here in Toronto. But she was a niece, and of course they didn't want her to work, and she wanted to work. Be normal. Of course, now all society girls, they all have work. They prefer, they find it's healthier to have a job.
So this was one of Emma's close friends, you're saying?
Oh, they became great friends. Oh, she worshipped Emma Goldman.
Mm-hmm.
She was young too. She
Well,
was about 20 years of age. She worshipped Emma Goldman, and she was always around Emma, trying to do things for her.
What was your own connection with Emma?
Well, you see, I didn't type. If I had typed, I would have been very close with her, because she was always doing papers and preparing speeches. And so, what's her name? Miss Bailey was very helpful in that respect. So a lot of time was taken up with people who could serve her better.
Dorothy Rogers worked with her, and Millie Desser worked with her. We've met
Yeah,
with her.
well, you see, I didn't type, so therefore, you see, that excluded me because they had important things to do. So anyway.
But you knew Arthur.
Oh, I knew Arthur, yes. I knew Arthur because he was a friend of my father. He used to come every Saturday night. Arthur is a very tall man, and I was about 14 when I first met him, and he was just 15. And I couldn't believe that now I can't believe that he was 15, just a year older than myself. I thought he was a man of about 40 because he was so tall. But every Saturday night came, and he always brought me the latest publication of books, like Ignazio Salone book, and Benedetto Croce, his philosophy. He always brought me these books to read. And when he'd bring me one, I'd give it back to him, he'd bring me a new one, and
Italian?
he'd pass it on.
In Italian?
No, in English. The news publications, Like That Man Heine, that was printed in English, The Life of Heine, and he brought me that book. And then the newspaper reporter gave it to me for Christmas, so I had the copy that the reporter gave me, the one that Arthur, well, it was alone, because each time he came, he brought me a new book, and he'd circle them. Always interested in literature, educating people. That was his main interest in life, even now. You go to his place, he's always got a new book to give you. Oh, he's a wonderful character. And he's always been very generous with donations to all of these causes, more so than the people who were very wealthy. At that time, he was not wealthy, but he later became. And he still maintained his interest. He didn't lose interest. I mean, getting a lot of money didn't change his attitude toward progressive ideas.
Well, he was telling us that he was with Emma when she died, actually. Did you have contact with her the last year of her life or something?
No, I think I was away quite a bit. No, I didn't even go to her funeral. That was awful. Here I was 14 years of age, and I was the cheerleader to her first lecture here in Toronto. Here, little me, with small bones. I was 18 at the time, and I looked like a kid of 14. I really did. And here I was acted as cheerleading. But as far as being cheerleader with birth control, that was they said, well, if you do that, it would have been a good thing because it would, anything that's sensational attracts the public.
Right.
One way or the other.
And
yeah.
I didn't mind.
Mhm.
I had nothing to lose. My boss was behind me. But other people, they had to watch themselves carefully. Like my
Did you see Emma again after that meeting? Many times?
Oh yes, I used to see her whenever she was free. Yes, I'd go to see her and have chats with her. But she was really too busy writing and getting people to do her transcripts for her,
Sure.
so that I didn't see too much of her. And her brother, Dr. Goldman,
Yes.
came to Toronto for a whole month, and we used to go to concerts together. He loves symphony concerts.
Nice.
And we went to hear Misha Elman, and we went backstage to shake hands with him. Because he always did this.
This was you and Morris.
Yeah.
And
you
Emma
know,
too?
in New York, no, Emma never came. She never had time for that. But anyway, in New York City, he did the same thing. It was Yasha Heifetz. He would go behind stage and shake hands with him. In Toronto, he did the same thing. And we went to concerts for a whole month. We always went to concerts. He loved concerts. He really did. So anyway, it was very lonely for him because his wife was a nurse to very wealthy people in Florida, and she couldn't leave that to be up in Toronto. And so I was good company for him. And Emma was very glad. She says, "You're keeping my brother happy because he's got nobody here, and you're young, so that makes it better." Because I think he was head of in Arizona. I think he was head of the hospital in Arizona for the tubercular. Yeah, he was head of the hospital. Then he later died. He had to have his leg amputated. I think it was due to diabetes, and he died in New York City.
Well, this has been very interesting and helpful,
Yeah.
and we're going to keep working at it. Next June would have been Emma's 125th birthday,
Imagine.
and the Workman's Circle, Carl Longworth, have invited us to come and perform here, a piece about her. So we'd be delighted to have you as a guest of honor, if you'll come.
When will that be?
June.
In June.
We'll be back actually in October. We'll be doing a concert in Holy Blossom Synagogue, and we'll let you know about that too. Okay? We haven't got the date on that yet. We'll know in the next 2 days.
Oh, that's a very beautiful place, isn't
Oh,
it?
it's gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah.
Extraordinarily beautiful.
Yeah. We gotta run. We gotta be late for our
Okay,
music.
well, let me say.
Okay.
Wait a second. So I know so I can say this properly.
Okay. Thank you very